Alright, hello everybody. Friendly Red here, and yeah, it's been a while since I've had a review, hasn't it? In that time, I've realized that reviewing games in the traditional sense isn't really something I want to have as one of my core video types. Personally, I'm not even someone who really values reviews all that much, or at least a lot of the common types of them we see put out in media today. So, that's why I'll be restructuring the Red's Review video format into Red Recommends. Starting with this video. While a lot of what I'll discuss will remain similar to what was in that original Dragon's Dogma 2 review, these recommendation videos will be different in a few ways, with one of the most notable being that the game I'm recommending will most likely be one I've yet to actually finish. Obviously, it's hard to take something like a review of something serious if one hasn't fully experienced the topic in review, which is why I think it's better to rebrand these videos as more of recommendations. I'll still be able to discuss pros, cons, and other aspects of the game, and not having the pressure of having to fully finish a game before making a video on it will be quite nice, as it means I'll get to make videos on topics and games I really want to talk about sooner, rather than later. In fact, that last reason is my main driving force behind this change, because, man, I really want to talk about this one. So, with all that aside, I think it's time we get into this rebirth of Red's Review, known as Red Recommends. Our first game to get the honor of this video format is none other than Ys VIII, Lacrimosa of Dana, which, well, I know what two of those words are at least. So, Ys VIII. Man, having finally played something from this series, I'm honestly just mad at myself for not getting into it sooner. Though it may be best to provide some info on Ys as a whole, because despite being a very long-running and beloved series, it's seemingly also done a pretty good job of staying under the radar for many, myself included, for quite some time. Ys is a series of RPGs developed by Nihon Falcom, who are also responsible for the Trail series of RPGs. While the Trail series typically has featured more strategical turn-based combat, the Ys series offers real-time, action hack-and-slash gameplay, and has done so ever since its first ever title back in 1987. In Ys, the player takes on the role of the world-faring adventurer known as Adol Christian, and each game actually serves as a retelling of one of his many adventures. Now, being around since the late 80s means Adol has quite the collection of stories to tell, and indeed, as of 2023, Adol has 10 mainline entries to call his own, with numerous other remakes and side games out there too. Now, I actually didn't really know of Ys myself until earlier this year, when the man, the myth, the Lineman, posted a tech review of Ys X Nordics over on Digital Foundry, and of course, leave it to John to put yet another amazing game I didn't know anything about on the map for me. Seeing the visuals, combat, and traversal mechanics and more alongside his excellent dialogue on the game and series as a whole instantly hooked me, and I knew after that video was done that I really wanted to play 10 once it released here in North America, as at the time of that video, and this one for that matter, it was only available in Japan. Fast forward to summer of this year, and we were finally given the release date for Ys X here in the States, that being October 25th. I was pumped to finally know when I could play the game, but at the same time, I was also feeling that maybe I shouldn't wait until 10 releases to finally experience the series. Maybe I should try out some of the older games in the meantime. That idea lingered on in my mind, and it wasn't until I stumbled across this lovely video by YouTube user the Kiseki Nut that I finally acted on that idea. Kiseki's video on the series does a great job going over all the main games in the series and pointing out which ones would be best to start with if you're new, and it is because of his video that we find ourselves here today at this one. I decided I'd start my journey into the Ys series with the 8th mainline entry, Lacrimosa of Dana, while also picking up the 9th game, Monstrum Nox, which, alongside 8, I plan to complete as well before 10's release later this fall. I think that's probably enough yapping about how we got to this point, so let's move on into the game itself. Ys VIII opens on Adol traveling at sea with his best friend and longtime companion, Dogi, on the hunt for new adventures. What starts as an unassuming and safe voyage at sea quickly takes a turn for the worse shortly after the captain tells tale of a nearby island that sinks any ships that sail near it. Despite doing his best to avoid said island, the ship finds itself in some trouble, and Adol, Dogi, and the rest of the crew and passengers are all thrown out to sea. This opening section does a good job acquainting you with basic controls and introducing some other things, though it's pretty uninteresting overall. I mean, even when things do start to pick up and you're given the combat tutorial, it's still not all too exciting. After waking up on an unknown beach, Adol takes up a nearby washed-up sword and heads inland to hopefully find other people and get some answers. From this point, the game really opens up. Sure, you do have a few more story segments, tutorials, and dialogue sections to make it through, but it's here where you really start to get into the groove of Ys VIII. And man, what a groove it is. Usually in more open action-adventure games or RPGs like Ys, exploring is important and can lead to some cool discoveries, but is never really 100% required. Here though, exploring is the main objective of the game, and it works super well here for a few reasons. For story purposes, it works quite well, as it makes sense that Adol and the other passengers and crew would want to learn as much as they can about where they washed up, while also looking for more survivors. As for gameplay, having a large, uncharted island to explore makes for a fun and intriguing backdrop for all the different things you'll be doing in the game. And speaking of things you'll be doing in the game, for starters, the movement and combat in Ys VIII is quick, snappy, and responsive, and there's a really nice flow to both. There's really no pauses or special animations or anything that stops you from moving or exploring when combat begins, and it just feels really good to keep a rhythm going of sorts, running around and exploring while also trying to take out enemies around you in a quick manner, as to not halt your exploration. Combat consists of basic attack combos that fuel your ability to use special attacks, and during both exploration and combat, you can take control of any of your 3 party members, which you'll want to do to be successful. Different characters have different attributes through their attacks and specials, and some are more effective than others against certain enemies, so having a balanced team that covers all damage types and switching between them is important. Thankfully, switching is instant and seamless, so you never really have to stop the action should you need to readjust at a moment's notice. As you progress and level up, your party members will learn new special attacks that you can equip, up to 4 per party member. I've only had access to 4 playable characters thus far, but I've enjoyed my time with them all greatly, even if I have my preferences. Combat, exploring, and looking for other survivors makes up the bulk of Ys VIII's main objectives, but there are other activities you can partake in should you so choose. Fishing is unlocked pretty early on, and it's actually pretty fun here. You can fish in almost any body of water you come across, and it's for sure worth doing every now and then, as not only as you can use the fish and materials you get from it for trading and crafting, but you can also sometimes fish up treasure as well. Speaking of trading and crafting, you'll be doing that back at the survivor's home base camp. This essentially acts as your hub in-game, where you can access all kinds of different facilities set up by other survivors, take on side quests, and occasionally help defend it against raids, which are short, wave-based defense missions where you fight off groups of enemies and get materials and other rewards the faster and better you do. I think that's a pretty good overview of the main kinds of things you'll be doing in Ys VIII on the gameplay front, so now I'd like to briefly touch on some other aspects of the game before we wrap it up here. I won't spend too long on this, as it's hard to fairly judge it without fully experiencing it, but the story of Ys VIII so far is fine. Gameplay is always more important to me than story anyways, and I think the story is perfectly serviceable and works well in tandem with the gameplay, but it's really nothing all too special, at least not yet. There have been some snippets and visions of something more interesting sprinkled throughout my adventure so far, and I'm very curious to see what those will end up being about and how they connect to Adol and his story, but I suppose I'll just need to keep on exploring if I want answers to my questions. Presentation-wise, the game cleans up pretty nicely on modern platforms, but don't expect to be blown away by its graphics or anything, as it originally was a PlayStation Vita game. Personally, I think the game looks quite nice, and being a bit more low-spec means it's super easy to get the game to run at buttery smooth frame rates if you're playing on PC or something like the Steam Deck OLED. I think the more notable aspect regarding Ys VIII's presentation is the music. I'd heard that this series had some great tunes throughout its history, and I can confirm that in Ys VIII alone, there are loads of really great energetic tracks that elevate the exploration and combat that much more. Take a listen. So, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that I do indeed recommend checking out Ys VIII, and I'm certainly glad I did ahead of Ys X's release. If you're also new and interested in checking out the series before 10 releases, I think this is a great place to start. Not only is 8 just a stupid fun game to play, but it's also one of the more easily accessible Ys games today, as it can be played not only on PC, but PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and interestingly, a native PS5 version exists as well, which I find a little odd. I mean, you can already play the PS4 version on PS5, but I suppose the PS5 version probably offers some visual and performance upgrades over the PS4 and Switch releases, so there's that to consider. Man, I really want to go play some more Ys VIII now. With all that being said, I think that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, I thank you for watching. Your continued viewership and support is greatly appreciated. Here's hoping I was able to entertain, and perhaps even convince you to check out Ys for yourself, and, as always, I'll see you next time.